Welcome back to The Lost Tactician, where we unearth the buried secrets of history's most dangerous eras. Now, just picture this for a moment. You're sealed behind these massive 3-ton blast doors, and the world above is, well, reduced to ash and radiation. The very shelter that once promised you salvation has, in a cruel twist, become your tomb. The question isn't whether you'll survive the bombs, it's whether you'll survive the shelter itself. Today, we're descending into the forgotten engineering marvels of Cold War escape routes, where the real battle for survival actually began the moment those massive doors locked shut. This is the story of humanity's most ingenious exit strategies from the fortresses that, ironically, were designed to keep us trapped inside. The Cold War, honestly, it transformed our relationship with the Earth itself. Across America, Europe, and the Soviet Union, engineers carved these vast networks beneath the surface, creating what they called survival shelters, but what often resembled, well, elaborate concrete prisons. These weren't just simple basement hideaways. Government bunkers sprawled across acres underground, containing command centers, dormitories, medical facilities, and communication hubs. Even the more modest family shelters represented feats of engineering, with walls thick enough to withstand overpressure waves that could, flatten entire city blocks above. The psychological architecture of these spaces was as deliberate as their physical construction. Designers understood that occupants faced not days but potentially months sealed underground, breathing recycled air through massive filtration systems equipped with nuclear, biological, and chemical filters. Every cubic foot was calculated for maximum occupancy, every resource rationed for extended survival. The blast doors themselves, those imposing steel behemoths, were masterpieces of security engineering, designed to seal so perfectly that even the shockwave from a nearby nuclear detonation couldn't breach them. But therein lay the terrible irony. The very features that made these shelters impenetrable from outside threats made them equally inescapable from within. A structural collapse, a fire, a mechanical failure, or simply the crushing weight of prolonged confinement could transform sanctuary into sepulchre. What really separated a survivable shelter from, well, a death trap was something most occupants honestly never noticed during all those routine drills and inspections: the secondary systems. The brilliant and, often unsung engineers who designed these facilities understood a fundamental truth about survival: redundancy saves lives. While the main entrance grabbed everyone's attention with its impressive blast doors and decontamination chambers, the real genius actually lay in the concealed escape tunnels that snaked away from the primary structure. These weren't just afterthoughts, but carefully integrated features, though their existence was often known only to facility managers and military personnel. These escape tunnels, honestly, represented a completely different philosophy of design. Where main entrances were built to impress and maybe even intimidate, escape routes prioritized function over form. Typically measuring just 3 to 4 feet in diameter, these tunnels required occupants to crawl or crouch, following a deliberate upward slope toward the surface. The confining dimensions served multiple purposes. They were cheaper to construct, harder for enemies to infiltrate, and could be concealed more easily at their terminus points. Many terminated beneath seemingly ordinary features: a concrete driveway, a garden shed, a municipal utility access point. The external hatches were camouflaged masterpieces, designed to be invisible from above, yet openable from below with the right knowledge. The most sophisticated escape route means nothing if the path is blocked or the mechanism fails. Cold War planners anticipated this reality, equipping shelters with tools and equipment that served dual purposes: medical oxygen tanks, stored for treating radiation exposure and smoke inhalation, could generate tremendous pressure when properly manipulated. Industrial cutting equipment, ostensibly for maintenance work, became breach tools in desperate circumstances. Even the communication systems contained components that, in the hands of someone with electrical knowledge, could override electronic locks or power emergency lighting in darkened escape tunnels. The real stories of shelter escapes, documented in training exercises and the few actual emergencies that occurred, reveal how occupants combined official equipment with improvised solutions. Water pressure from the shelter's supply system could be redirected to hydraulic mechanisms. Ventilation fans, designed to circulate filtered air, could be reversed to create pressure differentials that might help dislodge debris-blocking escape routes. The very comprehensiveness of shelter provisioning meant that creative problem solvers had, well, an entire workshop of potential tools at their disposal. Training documents from the era emphasized what they called self-rescue protocols, instructing occupants on techniques for navigating collapsed sections and clearing obstructions. These weren't just theoretical exercises. Fire drills in operational bunkers revealed how quickly smoke could render main corridors impassable, and how a single structural failure could block primary exits. The existence of these protocols acknowledged an uncomfortable truth. Shelter survival depended less on the strength of the walls than on the resourcefulness of the people trapped within them. Emerging from shelter confinement presented challenges as complex as the escape itself. The Cold War planners who designed these facilities understood that the world above might be, honestly, fundamentally transformed, requiring completely different navigation strategies. Primary entrances, by their nature highly visible and structurally reinforced, could become liability points, buried under rubble, surrounded by radiation hotspots, or simply too compromised to operate safely. This reality drove the strategic placement of alternative exits. The most sophisticated shelters incorporated radiation monitoring systems that extended beyond their walls, using remote sensors to map the contaminated landscape above. Occupants weren't meant to simply emerge and hope for the best. They were supposed to gather intelligence about surface conditions, identifying which exit points offered the safest passage. Escape tunnels often terminated at multiple locations, providing options based on prevailing wind patterns, potential fallout distribution, and proximity to water sources that might concentrate radioactive particles. Some facilities connected to urban infrastructure in ways that offered unexpected advantages. Abandoned storm drains and sewer systems, while far from pleasant, provided shielded pathways away from surface radiation. Service tunnels for utilities created networks that extended for miles underground, offering routes to reach less affected areas. These weren't official evacuation routes, but engineers familiar with urban planning recognized them as viable alternatives when conventional exits proved unusable. The key was understanding that shelter escape wasn't simply about getting out, it was about getting out to somewhere survivable. Beyond the engineering and equipment, Cold War shelter escape ultimately depended on something more intangible: the psychological resilience to function in extreme confinement. Designers incorporated features specifically to maintain mental health during extended stays, assigned roles to give occupants purpose, recreational equipment to prevent deterioration, and strict schedules to maintain structure. These weren't luxuries but survival necessities because, honestly, the most sophisticated escape route means nothing if panic and despair prevent its use. Training emphasized maintaining calm during emergencies, understanding that clear thinking separated successful evacuations from fatal mistakes. The confined dimensions of escape tunnels, the darkness, the uncertainty about surface conditions, all these factors tested human endurance in ways that really transcended physical challenges. Historical accounts from shelter drills reveal that the greatest obstacles weren't always mechanical failures, but human hesitation, the instinct to remain in familiar confines rather than venture into unknown dangers. This psychological dimension explains why shelter design evolved to include not just escape routes, but comprehensive survival protocols. Occupants needed to believe in their ability to survive both inside the shelter and during the escape process. Maps of internal layouts, regular drills practicing tunnel evacuation and radiation safety training. These elements built confidence as much as competence. The engineers who designed these systems understood that escape wasn't an engineering problem alone, but a human one, requiring preparation of mind as much as infrastructure. The Cold War's shelter systems never faced their ultimate test. We never witnessed mass evacuations from irradiated landscapes or saw these ingenious escape routes used in genuine nuclear aftermath. Yet, the principles embedded in their design remain profoundly relevant. Modern disaster preparedness, whether for natural catastrophes or human-made crises, echoes the same fundamental insights. Redundancy prevents catastrophe, knowledge enables survival, and the will to escape often matters more than the tools at hand. These forgotten tunnels and concealed hatches represent more than Cold War paranoia. They embody a philosophy of survival that refuses to accept entrapment as inevitable. Every secondary exit acknowledged that primary systems fail. Every concealed hatch admitted that even the most secure facility could become a trap. Every maintenance tunnel demonstrated that salvation often lies in the overlooked spaces, the unglamorous passages that receive less attention but provide critical alternatives when circumstances demand them. The mindset required to navigate Cold War shelters, the combination of careful planning and desperate improvisation, offers timeless wisdom. In our own age of complex systems and potential disruptions, the principle remains: understand your environment completely, identify alternatives before emergencies strike, and never assume that the obvious path represents your only option. The shelter designers who created these elaborate escape systems understood something fundamental about survival. Hope isn't found in impenetrable walls, but in hidden doors leading toward freedom. The next time you pass an innocuous utility hatch or wonder about that sealed door in an old building's basement, remember the extraordinary networks that might lie beneath. The Cold War's most valuable legacy isn't the shelters themselves, but the innovative spirit that refused to build prisons disguised as sanctuaries. If you found this journey into Cold War ingenuity compelling, subscribe to The Lost Tactician for more explorations of history's forgotten survival wisdom. Share this video with anyone fascinated by the hidden architecture of the most dangerous era in human history. And join us next time as we continue uncovering the tactical knowledge buried by time. Until then, remember, the way out always exists. Sometimes you just need to know where to look.